Good morning, everybody. Today is December 12th, 2023. This is the Podman Community Cabal meeting. We have a couple of topics and then open forum if people have other things they'd like to talk about. Our first two topics are backports for sub-projects without a release branch, and then secondarily, confidential containers discussion that Dan was going to lead, and he's not quite here yet, so I'm hoping you'll be coming on board quickly. So with all that, I'm going to stop sharing. And we'll talk just briefly about or maybe more than briefly, about backports for sub-projects without a release branch. And Paul, this was an action item that you had wanted to bring up. Do you want to take us on this? This was
yeah, sure I can. So I think that started with the C common issues, right?
Yes, in cryo in particular, asking for a backport.
Right. Yeah, so I guess we, like the Podman team, right, are when we are doing our releases, we have C common, C image, C storage, builder, Scopio, and so on. And generally, we are pretty good at having branches for our releases that go into rel and making sure they work with CI running on them. And apparently Cryo seems to use any tech version, and this is not necessarily a version that we are shipping in rel, so it's not really a version we might have a branch for or really care about upstream at all. So I guess the question really is, should the cryo team just manage their branches on their own and we give them permissions? Or do we want to have some synced releases somehow that they consume only branches that we support in rel or something like that? So if somebody wants to state their opinion on that.
How frequently is cryo actually looking for new features that we ship in Podman on the stack? I know that's been happening recently with the signature work, but I have my impression that's not the common cause. Typically, I see them using somewhat older versions of the dependencies. What I'm thinking is that it might be worthwhile to extend our vendor dances to cryo, not necessarily to block them on cryo, but at least to tell them, look, we are updating to these versions in lockstep, try to keep up, or something like that.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, I feel like the difficulty with the crowd joining the vendor dance is just that the crowd release timing is like totally asynchronous from the Podman one. Like you all have the ability to sort of tie the other projects' releases together. I think the only situation where we'd really need to sync the libraries is like when there's a shared configuration file like containers.conf or storage.conf rather, or registries.conf. But we don't use containers.conf from containers common, so I could see a point in us just kind of branching and having our own branches in the repo that we have control over and just merge the stuff. We don't usually merge stuff into containers common. This was brought up because an upstream contributor found an issue with some support that we needed a PR for. So this was like, I think this is one of the first times actually that we've hit this issue. So yeah, based on what we've said so far, it kind of makes sense to me to just have our own branches for containers common, and then that doesn't really finish the discussion because there is technically the containers image and container storage ones that we chatted about in the past, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me for cryo, but do we foresee this being an issue for some other project later on down the road?
I think for other projects, we shouldn't really, like, as upstream community, we should only roll forward with new releases and should avoid any kind of long-term branches at all, because that's a lot of work. And if somebody wants to do that, I think they can do that out of tree, like out of the upstream repo, if it's necessary for them.
Should we set up some kind of a thing where, you know, you have to tag the branch in a particular way, you know, perhaps name it cryo.053 or something along those lines?
Yeah, I think that would make the most sense. And if we name our branches like the rel something, I think that would also help to differentiate them from the general, because right now C-Common just uses the normal version as a branch name, so it's not clear if it's like a rel branch or, you know, just some one-off backport or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's probably something we ought to do for the rel stuff too going forward.
So Peter, is this like, if you are cutting a new cryo, is this something like you can do proactively, like just creating a branch on C-Common and C-Storage with the like cryo version,
Yeah,
something?
Probably what we'll end up doing is waiting until we have one of these backport situations to avoid extra work. So, you know, now we can create them based off of the containers common version, that those two branches that the upstream contributor wanted to pull back and change to. We can do that. But for, like, you know, we're about to release 129.0, for instance. I don't think that we need to make a branch for it proactively, because it's quite possible we'll go through the entire life cycle of 129 and not need another backported change.
Yeah, the only disadvantage is that CI might get broken in the meantime, because the way our CI image infrastructure works is Chris here in the call? I don't think. Like, it's sort of the CI image is gone after some inactivity on the branch, and the main uses a new image, so at some point it gets dropped. But I don't think CI is really important for you, right? I mean, you would have your CI on cryo anyway, so.
Right, that's really the one that we care most about. You know, yeah, so especially because I think the C-Common CI is not testing it running in cryo anyway. So really the vendor bump PR would be the one that we'd use to gate it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be fine for me. So if you just want to do it like this, if we maybe can have it somewhere documented that we agreed on this, and then.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll post a comment in the cryo issue and on the containers common PRs. In the meantime, someone who has admin rights on the containers common repo, would you like to reach out to me to see the people from the cryo world? Probably it would be Sasha and I who will get access to that.
Sure thing. I think a number of us, myself and others, can help you with that, Peter.
Peter, you can just come to me.
All right, cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if it might, rather than bearing it in the issue, if it might make sense to open a separate discussion in GitHub on one of those.
To add admins?
Yeah.
No.
I'll just. Oh, go ahead.
For the branching that we're talking about doing in the future.
Yeah. I'll post a comment about like what we decided on, and then I'm just gonna check with Sasha and see if it'll just be the two of us who have the control over this, or if we want to add someone else, and then I'll reach out to Brent asking for that access.
Okay, that works for me. Yeah, and the thing that I'd like to see is to try and make it a little bit generic, just in case we ever have another instance of another project that needs to do a similar thing in the future. I'd like to set a guideline.
So Peter, actually, maybe a better way would be, do you want to Do you want to edit the owner's file in a PR? And then I'll go.
Sure.
That'll get the OpenShift side of things straight. And then I'll go take that and go into the org thing and make sure that GitHub
Cool.
reflects that as well.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, just ping me with the PR.
Yep.
Oh, and then I see that I'm talking on mute without doing anything well about that. So next topic that we have is about the confidential containers. I saw that Tyler has come in and Nolan is here. Did Dan show up? Do not see him yet. Okay, so do one of you gents want to go ahead and kick us off on the confidential containers discussion?
Sure, let's go with that. I don't have any slides or demo prepared for this, so I'm just going to talk in broad strokes. The general way it works is that most of our efforts in this area are focused around using krun as a runtime or libkrun, enabled through crun when we invoke it as krun. And so that means so far the main support for it is on top of AMD's EPYC-based processors, which you typically see used in data centers. It's really hard to find consumer-grade hardware that has the necessary features. Having said that, when you build an image, there's a --CW flag that you can use to create a confidential workload image. It gets registered with a server that keeps track of various things about the image and knows the passphrase that you use to encrypt a disk image, because the contents of that container image are not a root file system. It's just an encrypted disk image that can be mounted over loopback by a VM, a micro VM, which is what krun runs. The VM then contacts the same server that you registered the image with when you were building it, and it gets the information needed in order to decrypt it. And this is all done using hardware virtualization features that keep the memory that process, that micro VM is executing in, opaque to the host OS. So if you are root on the machine that's running the confidential VM, you can't look at the memory because it's encrypted, and the disk that it's using is also encrypted with a key that you can't get because it's only available inside of the encrypted process. In broad strokes, that's all that's going on there. Build time, there's some details, but I don't think more than like 2 people on this call really care about the details there. Hopefully that was a useful description.
So I'm part of the libkrun project as well, and I do have slides, but it goes much more into the confidential piece and less into Podman. If you're interested, I won't share them here right now, just because I don't think others are very interested in pieces such as attestation and how that works. The one thing that I would note is that although at the moment the only really what we call trusted execution environments that are supported are like Nolan said, for mostly cloud hardware and servers. We are exploring. There's starting to become some extensions to the ARM architecture in ARM v9a that will allow for confidential containers to be run on ARM hardware. And as some of you may know, Dan is interested in the edge use case for confidential containers, and thus we are exploring with ARM hardware. Hopefully we can get something working with that soon.
I think there might be some interest. Is there anything you can do, just like a quick intro of the slides that you have, Tyler?
No, it was my DevCom talk, which is about half an hour long and goes into attestation, which is really a way to prove that, and it doesn't go into Podman really. It's more libkrun focused and how a libkrun virtual machine is attested on a separate attestation server. So it's basically a way to prove that you are running on trusted AMD hardware through examining attestation evidence, such as verifying different certificates from the hardware manufacturer, and then comparing what are known as launch measurements, which is basically a hash of everything that's going to be running in that container. If you'd like, I could prepare something short for the next meeting that kind of can touch over that, but can see how Podman interacts with that. Podman does have a piece here with Builda, in that Podman measures the contents of the container and then registers that with an attestation server. So when a libkrun guest goes to attest its contents, it thus has reference information to compare with. Sorry if that was a bit long-winded.
No, that's okay. And I think that'd be great for another discussion at the next meeting. If you're available, it should be
Sure.
January 16th.
Sure. I mean, that's really all I have, really. Trying that out for yourself is, like I said, easy as having the CW flag, but you also need to be on the right hardware, of course, which has been scarce nowadays for some of the latest AMD boxes. I don't know if are released to the public yet, but at least the ones that would use the architecture that we're running on, but eventually should be.
No, Dwayne, I think you had asked about this subject before the meeting. Do you have any questions that perhaps Nolan or Tyler could answer for you?
I'm also a part of the Edge Special Interest Group, and I guess I got into this because I saw the feature was being set on FCOS and SCOS, and I was just trying to see, was it operational and were people utilizing it? And we will be very interested as soon as you can get it tested on the Edge, because we would really like to explore that for any use cases.
I haven't. The Edge case is in its infancy right now. I haven't. We're still trying to get access to some of the emulators for ARM v9a that we can run tests under to see if when we eventually get some hardware, that the processor extensions will be able to be emulated right, because we can't get our hands on hardware at the moment. Like I said, this is just coming online from ARM, which is why we haven't focused on it before. But as you see, the Edge use case has been talked about a lot. So that's why we, I mean, as soon as we can either have these, some of the emulators working to run tests, or we can get our hands on hardware, I would have more of a, time goals, some goals and a specific timeline to give you, but I have nothing, I have none of the sort right now.
And also, I thought I was reading, maybe I was saying something, saying there was a way to do it without being in the T environment without the hardware. Is that not, that's not correct?
No, at the moment you need to be on hardware that supports trusted execution environments. That's the what is known as SEV SMP for AMD, and then Intel TDX hardware. That's the two we support. Or I'm sorry, there is a legacy AMD hardware that is widely available to the public right now, and that does work as well. So 2 AMD boxes and 1 Intel. Mostly though, you need to be on that hardware to run.
So you need to have that hardware for your home lab in order to do this. Okay.
Now, the sub-compatible hardware you're talking about is still AMD EPYC processors. It's not like a Ryzen 7 that I'm going to have in my desktop, right?
I don't. Yeah, EPYC processors are the main one for Intel and AMD. These are part of the cloud hardware. How I would describe it. For AMD, yes, it's EPYC. For Intel, it's Emerald Rapids.
Also, I was going to say Dan had messaged me back saying he was in a conflicting meeting and hoping he could be here soon. It's a little late for me to bring that up now, but here we are.
And Dan just showed up, actually.
I'm like Beetlejuice.
You just have to say your name 3 times, and there you are. So Tyler and Nolan gave a quick overview over what confidential computers are and the current state of where things are going. Did you have anything in particular that you wanted to say?
No, just that, I see this as a potential real good use case for edge computing. And I've been trying to push it towards there. Just that the big hindrance to it at this point is still cost of hardware. But I think that eventually will get rectified, and doing this on a device that you don't have control of, to me, makes a lot of sense from a security point of view. You can't trust the administrator on a machine to not cause it, and if the machine can be touched by anybody, then anybody becomes an administrator. So that's one of the reasons I've been pushing, trying to push this forward from the container's point of view.
Yeah, demos that I've seen of this stuff in the past were run on Azure. I believe Azure has got a sane setup to make this work.
Yes, Azure has a setup as well for SevSMP. Like I said, I think there's the one thing that there may be useful to distinguish is the difference between x86 hardware is mostly focused on cloud, and when you think of cheap hardware, you think of edge. I don't know if you'll see EPYC processors anytime on the edge. That's why we're looking more into the ARM. In the future, at some point, we haven't really seen the extensions. The processor extensions really aren't there yet, but eventually RISC-V will have something available. So those, if you're thinking about an edge use case, I think that would be more ARM and RISC-V would be more where you're looking at. As far as x86 is concerned, these extensions are really only seen on expensive server hardware deployed in clouds, as far as I've seen, mostly.
Yeah, from a customer point of view, I don't understand the demand for these type of machines on your local hardware, just because you're paying a lot of money and you sort of trust the admins who are working for you. And in the cloud, right, millions and millions of people have gone to the cloud, and they sort of trust Microsoft and Azure, or Microsoft and Amazon and Google to not do bad things as administrators of the cloud. So there are the real paranoid who would worry from a security point of view. It makes sense that if I have a container breakout in one environment, it can't break into the confidential container because it's running in encrypted mode. But to me, anytime I look at this, I don't know who's going to pay big money for this other than, again, maybe the U.S. government in certain security environments, and maybe some banks, maybe. The cloud vendors like the idea of this stuff because they could charge a premium for it. So instead of you paying me $1 an hour for a VM, you can pay me $10 an hour for a secure VM. And but I don't know how many people are going to pay X% more to run their workloads. Go, Martin.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, where I used to be before we did deploy EPYC processors to a bunch of retail stores in an application that was for video analytics to prevent organized retail crime and things like that. But the focus of that was not the secure container aspect of it, just that we had the EPYC processor hardware on site.
Right. But I mean, that would be a use case where potentially the hardware is accessible by the public.
Right.
So that actually, again, makes some sense. I don't know. EPYC hardware is pretty expensive, though, is my understanding. So
it sure was.
Yeah. So I just look at this again. When I say a cheap machine, I'm talking sub $500 or sub $1,000, and right now I don't think those exist. And as Tyler said, they're going to be on the ARM platform if, or cheaper Intels eventually. But if there's enough demand for it, I'm sure AMD and Intel will react with processors.
Okay, other thoughts, questions? Ready. I'm going to throw them under the bus a little bit here, but Brent and or Matt, did you want to discuss anything about Podman 4.8 or 5.0 at this today?
I actually have another topic we could kind of kick around since Nolan's here and Dan is very interested in.
Sorry, before we jump to that, as I mentioned before, would you like me to present a demo of Podman for the next meeting?
Yes, please.
Sure. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
Yeah, I've put you down for the possible topics for next time, and we can talk offline and narrow down if I got the right topic.
Will do.
Yeah. Brent, back to you.
Okay. We've been kicking ideas and beliefs and thoughts and whatnots around quite a bit about using artifacts from OCI registries in various ways. And just to review, Podman has an interest in this because we intend to use this idea for versioning. Hi, Nolan. Glad to see you. And so I kind of took to do some preliminary poking around to see what tools like Oris, which was somewhat designed for this, although its primary use case, as it turns out, does differ. And then also sort of poking at that and then looking at working with Saeed from the Quay team to make sure that what it looks like on their side. And also it was helped to know where they were going because he clued me that they're about to turn off the artifact checking, the what is it, the type? Is it yeah, they're going to turn that off. So you can, like we thought, or I think we were all supposing, eventually you'd be able to define your own type and off you go. So that's evidently going to be a thing in January.
Saeed is the lead architect of Quay.io.
Yep. So that's good. I think that's good news because today you can't push anything that isn't of the singular type, which Oris happens to do. They go ahead and push it, and the type doesn't really reflect what's going on, which theoretically is not ideal. Also, the sort of the scenario that Podman's interested in differs a bit from what others are interested in the sense that others are sort of looking at the artifact storage as a pure, I want to store this object or blob out there and be able to get to it. We're looking at it slightly different in the sense that before we add the artifact, we're going to have a true OCI image out there that's got some bunch of architectures, okay? And the OCI image that's there is it's a true OCI image. It's not bootable. It's not a blob. It's the classic OCI image. And it'll have several architectures because we run on the Arch 64 and x86 64 in terms of Podman machine. And we have to also have those. So those will be there, and that'll look, I think, in the classic fashion. And I'm gonna pause when I say it so Nolan confirm. In the classic fashion, no artifacts, just what I described is essentially a manifest list with manifests in it. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so the complex, or the part that everyone's trying to get right in their head, is how do we go from that to now adding artifacts that also reflect architecture and some form of a type. So we've got x86 64 or AR64, but also because we can't just say it's a raw or it's a this, because you can run different things on the same architecture. You can run different things on the same provider. So we do need those variables for us. So we need to be able to probably annotate. Valentin believed that the abuse of variant in the artifact world would be an abuse of the OCI specs. So he felt we should be making a provider annotation that would allow us to key off that. Go ahead, Nolan.
Okay, this is the part where I get lost is why are we using manifest lists for this at all?
Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of people on this call don't understand what we're building here. So I just want to take a step back. So one of the things we've been investigating inside of Red Hat is the idea of building bootable disk images. So QCOW2s or AMIs and other types of operating system images off of an OCI image. So this OCI image Brett's talking about will include the kernel and systemd and everything required to boot up. And what we're looking to do is to allow us to specify that, quay.io/podman/machine and have different artifacts that hang off of there that are specific to different types of bootable images, disk images. So one that's available for Mac and Apple hypervisor, or it might be for Linux as a QCOW2 and for Windows as a Hyper-V image. And then how do we link all these together so that a future version of Podman Machine can go out and discover, hey, I'm running on a Mac, I want to get the Apple hypervisor version of this.
So to go back to Nolan and your question, Nolan, I'm not sure if the answer is because people like Dan and I know just enough to be stupid, or if we have a common terminology issue, or in fact there is a technical thing, and so the information I'm getting from Saeed is one way. You might be thinking of it in another way. So that's maybe the answer.
My understanding of how this would be put together is if you're looking for the container image for, say, the x86 64 version of a disk image, like a QCOW image, for example, that corresponds to an OCI image that you would normally run with Podman with no other special features required, is that when you ask the registry, say, do you have any artifacts that are referring to this image manifest with this type of this type of artifact as part of your referral request? Now, the manifest that you tell it that you're asking if it's referring to is the one for the x86 64 OCI image. You're not asking it.
Repeat the last sentence.
Yeah, sure. When you're searching for the artifact, for an artifact related to a particular image, the request you're sending to the registry is a referrals request. You're saying, do you have any artifact manifests that refer to this particular manifest over here that are themselves of this type? So you say, do you have any manifests of QCOW type that refer to this manifest? Now, when you're saying this manifest, and it's a digest, you would be using the digest of the x86 64 container image, wouldn't you? Because why would you point it at the manifest list? Because then you have to sort through.
Because logically, that's the way Dan and I have it wired in our head, that we've got an OCI image that's an anchor point, and that OCI image is really a manifest list that's pointing to the various architectures. And in our head, we've got it wired that the artifacts, and whether is there such a thing as an artifact manifest? Is that a language issue that we're struggling with?
It's basically an image manifest that has an artifact type field in it that you can
Okay.
then search using that, and then the digest of another manifest that it refers to.
So I think in Dan and I's head, we kind of had it wired that
Where
those would be part of a manifest list as opposed to associated to the actual architectural manifest, if you will.
Okay,
But
so
what we're trying to do is get a feeling of what does this JSON file look like, so that we can then engineer to it.
okay, the guidance I'm looking for is, sorry, the guidance I'm going off of is in the image spec. It's been updated to include this. So let me see if I can, yeah. Like I start with this link that I'm going to post now. And from there, it includes links to the media type and the document. Like the second link is actually the more important one. It has an example of the contents. And I think there's a link to the refers API, which is in the protocol spec for how you talk to a registry to actually find particular artifacts. Now I forget where the refer actually gets stored in here.
I think it's in the manifest. Nalin, but you were talking about the subjects and referrals features. Is that actually necessary? I might have missed the part, but I think they just want to use an ordinary repo name and tag to refer to operating system-based images, but do subjects and referrals come into the play here?
Yeah, I think.
Hang on. Can you repeat that? I didn't quite catch it all.
You were mostly talking about the subjects and referrals features of OCI spec 1.1.
Yes.
Where does that come into play here? I thought that they just want to store binary blobs under a name and tag per architecture.
Yes. But the way we would find them would be, we would be looking at the OCI image that we would run for a non-VM image case. Like the use case we're talking about here is always distributing a VM image that's related to an OCI image. That, you know, so you Podman run the OCI image, and then you would boot the VM image.
And those two are strongly coupled in that you wouldn't want to run a different VM with the same application image. I mean, fine, it's an option.
I thought the general goal here was to be able to publish them in a way that we know that they're related to each other, that they contain the same code.
I think we want to I put in a little link in here. To me, Podman machine sitting on my Linux box is going to know where I'm going to specify which machine I want. So quay.io/Podman machine 5.0. It basically will match up to the version of Podman machine that I'm currently running. So whatever version it is, it's going to look for 5.0. And then it's going to say, I want this for a Linux, x86, and a QCOW too. And we need to be able to use...
Linux is irrelevant, though.
Well, I only put that in because if you did this on a Windows box, you'd be asking for Windows.
No, you wouldn't. It's the same. It's the same image. The image is always Linux.
Okay.
So I don't need to know the OS. I just need to know the provider type, the
I'm
flavor.
just that like. I mean, I guess
architecture.
if you had it, yeah, I guess, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, bottom line is it's asking for the Arch, the variant, I guess, if on certain platforms, and it's going to ask for the type of VM that it's looking for. In this case, you know, that's our query. So the question, if what you're saying now, and I have the ability on an API I have the ability to go to quay.io Podman machine 5.0 and get a checksum of, you know, something
Well,
like that.
5.0 would be a tag, and that would be a manifest list. You would pick the x86 image out of that list, and then say, hey, are there any artifacts of type blah 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 /QCOW2 or whatever that refer to this particular manifest for this x86 64 image, and it'll give you a list of one, probably just one.
Right.
No, why
So
would
is
that be
is that going to end up being
just a manifest?
Say again?
Why would we do a referrer lookup in there? It would be just an artifact manifest. Like the reason I'm kind of interested in this is that I'm not sure how much the reference feature is actually supported in the wild.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask Brent at some point in this conversation. Because it's a great optimization over the fake version of it that the spec says you have to do if the registry doesn't support it.
What I think I hear from the requirements is that they just want to do a manifest list of artifact manifests, and that's it. I might be missing something.
No, I think you're right. I'm just trying to nudge them toward not doing that because it looks ugly.
Not doing what exactly?
To not building a manifest list with just artifacts in it.
Okay, and so there are two different thoughts here. That's Dan. So we've got that isolated, and so I think the now I need to know, Nolan, can you speak more about why you don't like that approach?
Because notionally, I like to think that a manifest list is things that are more or less interchangeable. And I don't know that the difference between a container image and a VM image is really the same sort of thing as the difference between, say, an x86 image and an ARM image. I don't really have a good definition for why, though. So maybe I'm just coming at it this wrong.
Well,
I
I
think
think
is
the type being different. I think the type being different is legitimate, right? That one's a container image and the other one is a QCOW2. So there.
I think
What would you?
we would just want to
Nolan,
express
is yours a
as an
singular?
artifact.
Is yours a singular file then, in the way you would do it, or is it I think somebody used the word refer. Are you referring to another JSON that describes the rest of the story?
Yes, it would be an artifact that says, hey, I'm the artifact of this type that corresponds to this container image you have over here. But Noslop was saying something that I didn't quite get either.
I think the cleanest way would be to just define artifact MIME type that says this is a Podman machine artifact. It has 20 layers, and each layer is a machine image for one architecture. That would be like, we are just natively expressing what we want. The downside is that we would need special tooling to copy that if you wanted to copy just one.
Oh, yeah, because if you tried to pull that image, at some point,
Somebody is
probably
going to
find
try,
that at some
yeah.
point it would go up.
The question with I agree that using an image manifest list that points to artifacts that are not images is potentially confusing. The thing I struggle with there, that is, if you are saying that we should instead use referrers, what are going to be the subjects of those referrers? Like, there is no container image in there. If the whole purpose is to only represent machines, there is nothing to attach it to anyway.
Well, the machines are going to be built off of the OCI image, so there is a referral back to the OCI image that was used to build it.
Okay, yeah.
And just I want to clarify the OCI, the role of that OCI image for Podman machine is, suppose that I'm running something and a CVE comes out, we're going to respin that, and there's a way that from within Podman machine it can go and get that OCI image, pull it down, and update itself. If that makes sense, you don't have to go get a whole new QCOW to stay current. So that's what the role of that image is.
My first impression is that the consumers of the machine VM don't care. Like, that's our internal build process and
yes,
and source.
I'm trying to explain why we're trying to keep it all as a chunk.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense that there are actually containers images in there. Yeah,
yeah, and they are all in fact related.
I think you're right in the general case, Miloslav, but this specific case that we're trying to solve here, it would work. It would be enough.
Do you think that in more general terms, Nolan, though, like for people that are wanting to do this, that this approach excludes that? Because we were hoping to get to sort of general code.
Yeah, you're right.
And,
I don't know right now.
you know, this might be terribly boring to everyone, and we can sidekick this meeting now that we're all probably on the same page.
By the way, that we are considering building a brand new tool to be able to manage these types of images.
Dan is considering it. All right, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll kick a meeting with Valentin and the three of you.
Yep.
I'll kick out a new meeting. I would like to have a good understanding of this before we go into the holiday break.
Right.
That's the reason I'm pushing a little bit, because immediately following that break, I got to travel, and a bunch of us have to travel, and then we have a very short runway to get to Podman 5. So that's why I'm pushing. So I'll look for time where the four of us, as it turns out, can huddle. Because I think we've got it cornered now. It's just more, what does it look like?
I think we have to support Miloslav's use case as well, where it's an image, where it's an artifact that doesn't refer back to an OCI image.
Correct.
I think people are going to play with that mode as well.
Well, I think that's probably more what you're interested in.
No, I'm actually most of my images should be based off an OCI image, right? So for a Bootsy container, I'm expecting them to be. I just think the tool is going to be abused, you know, sort of like,
of course,
how Scopio gets abused in some of this.
Well, the whole spec allows you to abuse.
Right.
Is open to abuse. I do want to just make an asterisk to make sure I heard it correctly. Did I hear that pulling a singular artifact the way that we're sort of thinking about this, that doesn't exist yet? We can pull artifacts, but not when it's a list of them. Or what was the detail around that?
I think.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You probably know more about it than I do.
If you try to pull something that doesn't identify itself as an image, is basically going to fail, I think. You can copy such things from registries to registries, but if you have a data in there that is not an overlay tarball, but add a QKI image, C storage is not going to know what to do with it.
Okay.
So basically, we have to take the QCOW2 and wrap it as a tarball in order for Scopio to be able to copy it, right?
Well,
no, you can copy it with Scopio. You can't Podman pull it.
No, I don't care about Podman pull. We're looking more as, I mean, this new tool would be or library will be an enhancement on what Scopio can do right now. If Scopio can pull it, then that's good. That's goodness. As long as we can figure out what to pull, Scopio can pull it. That's in a perfect world, we would just expect Scopio and pull it to we'd pull it to an OCI image, an OCI directory, drop it there.
So parrot it back to me. We can pull it if we know what it is. Okay. All right. I'll take the to-do to get us rehuddled, and then we'll start writing some stuff down.
Right. It sounds like a good topic for the future, is to, once everything's been decided, if we can do that for a future meeting.
We might even talk about what the name of the tool is going to be.
I think that we're going to be talking about the tool that's already created and already done, and here's where the API is by that time, Tom.
Alrighty.
Or we're in big trouble.
Yeah. Hopefully February meeting, if not sooner.
It better be done by February, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.
It'll be more public by then too.
Bearing your way through that.
Yep. I think it was a good discussion. I will open it up for any other questions. We have just a few more minutes left in this meeting.
To throw another hand grenade in the session here, one of the things we stumbled upon in Podman Desktop, or I stumbled upon in Podman Desktop, is switching between a rootful and rootless is kind of a pain. And I just wanted to hear Brent scream at me about this, but is there any chance we could basically have a rootful and rootless at the same time?
Rootful and rootless what?
Socket. So I could basically go and talk to a socket, or would that be total insanity? So I'm on a Mac. Basically, I'm on a
Podman daemon.
I want, well, right now we have GB proxy listening on run Podman sock on a Mac. I'm making that up somewhat, but could I have run Podman -root.sock GB proxy also?
So you want a singular machine running, but two active sockets mapped
Right.
between the host and the VM.
Right.
I think it would be a great feature request.
Yeah. All right. I just wanted that. That's much preferable to you basically saying, Dan, you have your head up your butt, which is, you know, the usual.
Well, that comes later.
Yeah, save it for GitHub.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that. Hey,
Yeah,
it's a
just
fair-
looking.
I know
Really,
where you're
I'm
going
looking
with it.
for it's a way to do sudo Podman on a Mac.
Yeah, it's a fair request. We might have to have some, I'll say, academic conversations around that, but and it touches more. I don't think GV proxy really plays a huge role here, so but we have to get through them. I think it would be a good hackathon topic if you want to slide that under DV.
Yeah. All right.
And then maybe you don't even have to do a feature. But it's a very fair ask.
Okay, any other questions or asks?
It might be worth saying that the first machine file rework went in to main branch for Podman. It's currently not hooked. It's compiled in the code, but it's not currently hooked that were used. And as soon as that hooker use becomes a thing, it's going to be ugly for a little while. But we'll still make sure tests pass.
Hey, anything else from anybody before I go off and talk about future meetings that we've got coming up? Right, so our next Podman Community Cabal meeting, again, they've moved to the third Tuesday of the month, and that one is coming up relatively quickly. It's going to be on January 16th, again at 11 a.m. And then our next community meeting, which I'm hoping we'll have some good demos at that point in time, and won't have to cancel as we've canceled the past one or two, unfortunately. And if you have any topics or things that you'd like to see demoed, please let me know. And that will be on February 6th, also Tuesday, and that will also be at 11 a.m. So unless there are any last questions or such, I'm going to stop the recording now.